All right, let's dig into the motorsport history books today, because we're going to talk about one of the wildest, most ambitious, and frankly, one of the most dangerous events ever created, the very first Carrera Panamericana. So I want you to picture this. It's 1950. Your country has just finished this colossal project, a highway that runs from one end of the nation to the other. How do you celebrate that? A parade, maybe a ribbon-cutting ceremony? Well, Mexico had a slightly more theatrical idea. They decided to invite the best drivers from all over the world to come and race the entire length of their brand new road. It was an idea that was just born from pure national pride and, well, almost unbelievable guts. So, let's get into the why. What was the grand idea behind this highway and this absolutely audacious plan? See, this wasn't just a race for the sake of racing. Nope. This was a massive, government-sponsored PR campaign on wheels. The goal was pretty simple, really. First, show off the incredible new Pan American Highway, and second, send a message to the entire world that post-war Mexico was ready for business, ready for investment. It was basically national advertising at 100 miles an hour. And when you throw down a challenge that big, that bold, you get a really fascinating mix of people who show up to the party. Let's take a look at who answered the call. And I mean, this was a truly global event. You had drivers in their cars coming from all over the Americas, all over Europe, all descending on this one spot in Mexico, each one carrying their own national pride and their very different machines. And this is where it gets really fun, because it set up this perfect clash of automotive philosophies. On one side, you've got the American heavyweights, these big, beefy Cadillacs and Lincolns with massive engines. They were all about raw power. And on the other side, you have the Europeans, with their light, nimble Alfa Romeos and Delahaye's, cars built for finesse and handling on twisting roads. It was a classic battle, brute force versus agility. The drivers themselves were just as varied. You had legendary Formula One stars like Piero Taruffi going head-to-head with the pioneers of NASCAR, including the founder himself, Bill France Sr., and this young guy from Oregon, a lumberjack named Herschel McGriff, just an incredible melting pot of racing talent. So the stage was set, the cars were there, the drivers were ready. But what was the race itself actually like? Well, the short answer is, it was brutal. I mean, this thing was an absolute ordeal. We're talking 6 days, 9 incredibly tough stages, covering more than 2,000 miles. It started right at the U.S. border and ran the entire length of Mexico all the way down to Guatemala. It was a true test of endurance on roads that most of these drivers had never even seen before. And the terrain was just relentless. The route climbed to an elevation of over 10,000 feet. Now, at that altitude, the air gets incredibly thin, and it literally chokes an engine of its power. So to fight this, the mechanics had to constantly rejet the carburetors, which meant fiddling with these tiny little nozzles to adjust the air-fuel mix just to keep the cars breathing. It was a nonstop battle against the mountains themselves. And, we have to pause here and acknowledge just how incredibly dangerous this was. This was an era with basically no safety features. On open public roads, often with crowds of people standing right there, the risks were astronomical. The 1950 race tragically claimed 4 lives. It was a heartbreaking reminder of the human cost of this ambition. But out of all that chaos, all that challenge, came one of the greatest underdog stories in all of motorsport. So when you look at the final results, you'll see the top 3 spots were all held by American drivers and American cars. But look closely at number 1. It wasn't one of the big, powerful, heavily favored Cadillacs. Nope, it was Herschel McGriff in his pretty humble Oldsmobile 88. And get this, McGriff bought that Oldsmobile for just $1,900. The prize for winning? A whopping $17,000. That's not just a victory, that's one of the best returns on investment I've ever heard of. So, how did he do it? How did this total dark horse beat all the thoroughbreds? Well, it came down to a really simple but crucial advantage: weight. His Oldsmobile was a lot lighter than the big Cadillacs, which meant it was way easier to slow down. And that one simple fact meant McGriff finished the entire 2,000-mile race on his original set of brakes, while the heavier cars were grinding theirs to dust and replacing them every single night. And here's the absolute kicker, the part that makes this story legendary. McGriff and his co-driver, they were so new to all this, they really couldn't even perform basic maintenance on their own car. The fact that the car was so reliable that it didn't need any major repairs is exactly why they were able to win. It's just an incredible story of the perfect car meeting the perfect race. Now, the Carrera Panamericana only ran in its original, insane form for 5 years. But boy, its impact was immediate and it has lasted for decades. This race turned out to be so much more than a marketing stunt. It was an event of such raw, audacious peril that it just completely captured the world's imagination. It became a real-world test lab for cars, and it taught the entire auto industry a vital lesson. In a long-distance race, raw power is no match for reliability and balance. It pushed cars and their drivers to the absolute limit and created legends overnight. It really was a one-of-a-kind event, an advertisement written in oil and dust across the entire length of a country. And it leaves you with a really fascinating question to think about. In our modern world, with all our safety rules and risk assessments, could an event this wild, this dangerous, this purely ambitious even be possible today? Something to think about.